I had the key in the lock, the same brass key Uncle Ray had carried on his keyring for 47 years. When the white Audi Q5 roared up the drive and braked so hard the gravel pinged against my bumper like hail on a tin roof. The driver's door flew open before the dust even thought about settling. A woman stepped out, navy blazer pressed sharp enough to cut paper, sunglasses that cost more than my first pickup, hair so perfect it looked shellacked. She pointed one manicured finger straight at my heart. "You do not live here," she declared, voice flat and cold as January creek water. "The association has not approved occupancy." The laugh that came out of me was half disbelief, half reflex, the same laugh I used to give when the foreman told me a roof couldn't be done in a day. Only this time the joke wasn't funny. My hand was still on the key. The cylinder had just started to turn. Claire was halfway out of the truck, one foot on the running board. Mason already sprinting for the porch yelling about tree forts and which bedroom had the biggest window for stargazing. And here stood this stranger telling me I was trespassing on the only piece of earth my family had ever truly owned. I felt it first in my stomach, a slow, cold twist that climbed my spine and settled behind my eyes like a migraine coming on. 58 years old, knees shot from 38 years of framing houses, and some woman in a blazer was telling me I couldn't walk through my own front door. Claire's face went the color of January milk. Mason stopped mid-yell, one sneaker dangling off the porch step, sensing the shift in the air the way children and dogs always do. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was loud with everything we hadn't said yet. That was the first time fear tasted metallic in my mouth. Her name was Eleanor Whitlock. She introduced herself the way royalty does, last name first, title included. President of the Ridgeview Point Homeowners Association. She had glossy folders, two silent men in khaki polos who looked like they'd been grown in a lab, and the unshakable certainty of a woman who had never once in her adult life been told no. I tried reason. I tried humor. I tried showing her the probate order, the deed, the county tax map with our lot circled in red like a heartbeat on an EKG. She didn't glance at any of it. She simply dialed 911 and reported an unlawful occupancy in progress, as calm as ordering a latte. While we waited for the deputies, Claire stood behind me clutching Mason so tight I could see the white of her knuckles through the skin. Mason buried his face in her stomach and asked in the smallest voice I'd ever heard, "Are we in trouble, Papa?" I told him no, but the lie sat heavy on my tongue like a stone. Deputies Tom Hargrove and Luis Morales arrived in separate cruisers, lights painting the pines red and blue. Tom and I go back 30 years. He coached my nephew in Little League, came to Claire's mother's funeral. He took my paperwork, read every page, then looked at Eleanor's forged plat map and rubbed the back of his neck the way men do when they're about to deliver bad news they don't want to give. "Daniel," he said quietly, "your title's clean. County says this place has never been in the HOA. Relief flooded me so hard my knees almost buckled. Then he finished the sentence. "But this here's a civil matter. Until somebody swings or pulls iron, our hands are tied." The relief curdled into something darker. Eleanor's smile was small and sharp and utterly victorious. She didn't gloat out loud. She didn't have to. The look she gave me as she slid back into her Audi said everything. This is only round one. That night, Claire didn't sleep. I found her at 3 a.m., sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, staring at the moonlit yard like she expected tanks to roll across it. When I touched her shoulder, she jumped so hard the chair scraped backward. Her eyes were red, swollen, terrified in a way I hadn't seen since the night her daddy died. "We're going to lose this place, Daniel," she whispered. "We're going to lose everything again." I wanted to promise her we wouldn't. The words stuck in my throat because for the first time in our 34 years together, I wasn't sure I could keep them. Thursday night the headlights appeared. I was on the porch in nothing but boxers and an old Marine Corps t-shirt, coffee gone cold in my hand, when I saw them, two white eyes glowing at the end of the driveway, engine idling, unmoving. 43 minutes. I stood there the whole time, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. When the car finally crept away, I walked the fence line with a mag light and found the first sign zip-tied to my post. Temporary Community Oversight Zone. Eleanor's looping signature at the bottom like a brand. I tore it down and the plastic cut my fingers. I didn't feel the pain until later. Friday the mail stopped. Saturday the concrete barriers arrived. I came outside in my underwear again, seems I did a lot of that while losing my mind, and found 2 Jersey barriers blocking my driveway like sarcophaguses. Orange spray paint still dripping. And no trespassing, Ridgeview Point property. Claire stood behind me in her robe, arms wrapped around herself like she might fly apart. Mason peeked between her legs, eyes huge, lip trembling. That was the morning something inside me snapped clean in two. Not anger. Anger came later. It was a cold, crystalline clarity. This woman was going to keep coming until one of us was destroyed, and it was not going to be my family. I felt it settle in my bones the way winter settles into these mountains, slow, inevitable, permanent. The chainsaw morning is the one that still wakes me up sweating. I jolted out of bed to a sound I hadn't heard since Hurricane Hugo, multiple saws screaming in unison, metal on wood, the smell of 2-cycle exhaust. Claire was already at the window, hand over her mouth. Mason stood in the hallway in his Spider-Man pajamas, thumb in his mouth for the first time since he was 4. They were everywhere, neon vests, ear protection, the casual brutality of men being paid by the hour. One was cutting the lilac hedge Aunt Louise planted the year I shipped out to Vietnam. Another was ripping the pathway lights out of the ground like they were dandelions. A third was walking toward Uncle Ray's gazebo with a sawzall. I ran outside barefoot, screaming things I don't remember. The noise swallowed every word. Eleanor stood beside her black Lexus in sunglasses and a white blazer, arms folded, watching my life be dismantled the way other people watch HGTV. When the gazebo collapsed, the one Uncle Ray built with his own hands the summer I was in Da Nang, the one he sat in every evening with a glass of bourbon and a dog that died 10 years ago, something inside me collapsed with it. I felt it go. A physical sensation, like a support beam, giving way. Claire screamed from the porch. Mason started crying so hard, he couldn't catch his breath. I took one step toward Eleanor and felt the compliance officer's hand on my chest. Not rough, just there. A reminder that I was one wrong move away from handcuffs of my own. The deputies came again. Same song, different verse. Civil matter. Take it to court. Document everything. I stood in the wreckage of my yard, sawdust in my hair, splinters in my bare feet, my grandson sobbing into his mother's neck, and understood for the first time what helpless really means. That night I sat on the porch with a loaded shotgun across my knees until Claire made me come inside. I didn't sleep. I don't think I blinked. Travis showed up 3 nights later. He was shaking so hard the Civic's headlights jittered when he pulled in. 27 years old, looked 15 in the porch light, eyes red from crying or not sleeping, maybe both. He handed me the thumb drive like it was radioactive. Copy it and delete the original, he whispered. If she finds out I was here, she'll ruin me. When I asked why he was doing this, he started crying for real. Because my mom raised me better than this, he said. And because I can't look at my little girl anymore without seeing Mason standing on that porch watching strangers destroy the only safe place he's ever known. I hugged him, a full, hard, desperate hug from one man who'd been broken to another who was trying not to be. He cried into my shoulder like a child. I felt his ribs shaking. The audio file is 37 seconds long. I have listened to it maybe 200 times. Eleanor's voice, calm, precise, devoid of anything human. If the sheriff won't remove him, we'll bury him in fines and liens until he crawls away begging. Order must be maintained at all costs. Every single time, the same cold fury blooms in my chest like frostbite in reverse. Richard McAllister's office smelled like lemon polish and old books. He listened to the recording once, removed his glasses, and for a long moment just stared at the far wall. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Daniel, I've been doing this since 1978. I thought I'd seen every kind of ugly people can do to each other over dirt. I was wrong. Then he smiled, not kindly, but the way a wolf smiles when it catches scent. Let's go remind Mrs. Whitlock that some lines you don't cross in South Carolina. The morning of the hearing, Claire wore the navy dress she saves for weddings and funerals. Mason stayed with her sister. I couldn't have handled seeing him in that courtroom if things went sideways. Eleanor walked in like she was attending a charity gala, white suit, pearls, the same sunglasses now perched on her head. She didn't look at us. She didn't have to. Her posture said she had already won. Richard started slow. County plat map. Forge plat map. Metadata. Emails timestamped at 2:14 a.m. The audio. When Eleanor's voice filled the courtroom, cold, arrogant, merciless, Claire's hand found mine under the table and squeezed so hard I felt bones grind. Eleanor shot to her feet, face blotched red and white. That was private. Taken out of context. Judge Ellison's gavel cut the air like a gunshot. Sit down, Mrs. Whitlock. You'll have your turn. Right now you're going to listen to what you sound like when you think no one's recording. The chainsaw footage played last. The gazebo collapsing in slow motion. Mason's small figure on the porch, hands over his ears, mouth open in a scream you couldn't hear over the saws. I felt Claire shaking beside me. I was shaking too. Not from fear anymore. From rage, so pure it felt holy. Judge Margaret Ellison removed her glasses and looked at Eleanor the way a surgeon looks at a tumor. I have grandchildren, she said quietly. If anyone ever did to them what you did to that little boy, I would want them in a cell for the rest of their natural life. Then she read the ruling. Fraud. Criminal mischief. Mail tampering. Conspiracy to commit harassment. $1.17 million in compensatory and punitive damages. Immediate receivership of the HOA. And Eleanor Whitlock remanded into custody, pending felony indictment. The bailiff had to catch her under the arms because her legs forgot how to work. The last thing she said before the door closed was barely a whisper. I was keeping them safe. Safe. 6 months later, the lilacs are taller than Mason's head and smell like every good memory I have of my childhood. The new gazebo is cedar and copper, built by men who refused payment because some things are bigger than money. Mason falls asleep in it some nights with a Harry Potter book open on his chest and fireflies blinking around him like slow-motion stars. Eleanor took a plea. They found $412,000 in administrative fees that paid for Viking cruises, Botox, and that white Audi. She'll be eligible for parole when Mason is learning to drive. Some evenings Claire and I sit on the porch swing and don't say much. We just listen to the quiet, real quiet, the kind that used to exist before fear moved in. Mason runs barefoot through the yard chasing lightning bugs, laughing in a register I wasn't sure he still had. The gate at the end of the driveway is black iron, 10 feet high, with a simple welded plate across the top. Private property. No HOA. No exceptions. I walk down and touch it sometimes, just to feel the cold metal under my palm and remind myself it's real. This is what winning feels like when you've been to the edge and looked over. But here's what still keeps me awake some nights. How close we came. How easily it could have gone the other way if Travis hadn't grown a spine, if Richard hadn't taken the case. if 2 million strangers hadn't hit share? And the bigger question, the one I need you to answer. When did we decide it's okay for a grieving mother with a clipboard to terrorize a family because she's scared of chaos? When did community standards become code for do what I say or I'll destroy you? Tell me in the comments. Tell me your stories. Tell me if you think Eleanor is evil or just broken. Tell me if you would have fought or walked away with your tail between your legs. Tell me where you draw the line between protecting your neighborhood and becoming the very monster you're afraid of. Because the only reason this porch still has Harper feet on it is because enough people decided some things are worth bleeding for. The lilacs are blooming. The gate is locked. And for the first time since 1974, this hillside belongs, body, soul, and deed, to us. Your turn. Speak loud. I'm listening.